Hello and welcome to Sound Librarian. I'm Stefan Schutz. Beyond Good and Evil is another game that I haven't finished playing. And it's also another game that I should finish playing because it's a very, very good game. It's also refreshingly another game that has a strong female lead, and there are far too few of those. This is something that is a separate issue, but it's something that the game industry really does need to deal with. Beyond Good and Evil has a very interesting and engaging story. And it has characters that I find, even, Giant Bipedal Pig is so well written that it's a believable character. But I think that the elements of the audio that are significant are probably the dialogue first, and then the sound design and the music, because I think the dialogue is very, very strong, and it really, really helps to support these strong characters. So we're going to have a look at Beyond Good and Evil, and more importantly, we're going to have a listen to Beyond Good and Evil.
They're coming. Quick, Ven, jump up. Go tell Paige. I'll take care of the shield.
Shield activated. Shield disabled.
Your Optima account is
350.
units short. Your electrical supply has just been blocked.
Gotta be joking!
Thank you for...
Get back inside it! I got it handled! Get yourself to safety! Stay hidden, kids!
There are a few aspects of Beyond Good and Evil that I think are worth discussing. I really quite like the overall feel of this game. It had a very different feel to a lot of the games that were being produced at the time that this was produced. It was very story-driven. It had a fairly different feel to the world and to the action, and the concepts behind the character were also really quite good.
Hang on, Jade! I'm coming! Free yourself, Jade! I'll create a diversion!
In fact, all of the characters. Paige here is another one. So we get our characters introduced in a nice cinematic manner. There are quite a few cinematic sequences that are very good for keeping the story flowing and really, really getting the narrative across. And in general, I think the way it's presented, the colours, the camera work and the movements of the characters give it a good cinematic feel as well. From the audio point of view, I think the dialogue is probably the most significant thing, although I do have to say that I really enjoyed a lot of the music. The combat music was quite adequate and worked well in places, but I found in general that a lot of the more ambient music that was playing was really, really quite lovely. In fact, very, very reminiscent of some of my favourite Japanese anime film scores. Very, very simple in places, but really, really lovely melodies and just gentle, tuneful pieces that were played on appropriate instruments and just provided a really nice background feel for the game. So overall, I think the game has got some really good, solid elements. The sound effects themselves, I didn't find were particularly outstanding. Now, I mean that quite literally in that they weren't bad, and in most cases they were solid sound effects that did their job well, but they didn't stand out as being anything special. So there's nothing about the sounds that I would be particularly critical about, but at the same time there's nothing about the sounds that I would necessarily point out as being a strong point.
We're gonna be able to pay to get the hovercraft fixed with that.
Hey, Secundo, scan this for me, will ya?
Okay, Yates.
Una per Daramis. Bueno, Yid, but be careful. I did a checkup on you after your fight, and I noticed something got inside your psycho karma.
Something that I realized when I was playing through this game and doing this capture was of big significance from the audio point of view, and that's the dialogue. And it wasn't until I had the realization in playing Beyond Good and Evil that I basically realized that this is something that's not done in many other games at all. In fact, I've hardly seen it done at all within games. The character of the AI within this game is obviously a Latin background, and he has an accent. More than that, he has a very strong accent, and in fact, part of what he says is in Spanish. So this is a character that's talking to you in his own language that is a mixture of mostly English, but with some extra words thrown in there from what obviously his native language is supposed to be, which is Spanish. So you've got this combination of Spanish words thrown in with heavily accented English words and quite often some little idiosyncrasies as well. I didn't realise how significant this was until I'd listened to a whole scene with this character. And what's significant is that this is hardly ever done. Most games that are produced in the Western world have either clean, clear American accented voice actors or clean, clear English accented voice actors. And this is really, really quite significant. Occasionally we'll throw in perhaps a cliched French accent or a cliched Italian accent, but they'll generally be very, very light on, a la Mario or something like that, where there's no doubt that you can clearly understand what they're saying. And the reason why this is significant is because, frankly, it doesn't happen in the real world. There are very, very few monocultures on our planet, and there are very, very few places that are English speaking that do not have a broad mix of culture types, racial types, religious types, people from all sorts of different backgrounds, from all sorts of different cultures and countries, with their own language. In fact, English speaking people are some of the few people in the world that only speak one language. Most other cultures will speak several.
What a pessimisto! Your faithful servant, Secundo, has found the answer to your money problemo.
Secundo, we're stuck here. No hovercraft, no shield. Optima has cut off the power. The account is empty.
Units, you want units? You come to Secundo Mia Bella. Listen to this. The director, Senora from the Science Center, wants a collection of all the animals on the planet. She pay you dinero for any photo you send with little animal on it. Mira, that beast, for example. You take picture of it and tenga mucho units. Even your perro interests them.
Not another one of your harebrained plans, Segundo. Gonna have to recheck your circuits. Who could possibly be interested in that kind of thing? We're in the middle of a war, son.
You understand nada, bacon breath. Control of the species is mucho importante. Yet, you go get your camera back, and we'll see if Secundo has pepperoni on his processor. Ciao!
I found your camera, Jade. I put it right over there.
Newsflash. The war as if you were there. Doms have intensified their attacks on Hillis.
Camera ready. It's up to you now, Yate.
So the idea that we have a character here that has obviously a strong accent and a language of his own, that he's, and he's speaking English as a courtesy to the other English-speaking characters, is really significant. And I think it's a bit of a damning indictment on the games industry that I can't think of many other games that have even slightly approached this. The whole idea of having a character talking to you. In fact, I would suggest that we have more games with non-realistic alien languages being spoken by large tentacled monsters than we do dealing with cultures other than Anglo-Saxon white English-speaking backgrounds in our games industry in the Western world. This is not a good situation. And I'm quite happy to be very critical about this because we live in a world of many, many cultures. And the experience of dealing with this character in Beyond Good and Evil is really refreshing. It's really good having this guy say things to you, and occasionally it's like, well, I understand what he said, but I didn't get every word. And that's cool. That's exactly like what the real world is like. Speaking with people with lots of different accents, sometimes you'll get every third or fourth word. You can still understand what's being said, but their accent makes it a little bit of a challenge, but it makes it more interesting. So this, for me, is a really huge, strong point for Beyond Good and Evil, that they'd brought in a character that had his own cultural identity, rather than just being another cookie-cutter white Westerner. And in fact, to take this even further, there are a couple of games which I'm not sure whether I will review for this series or not, that are supposedly set in other cultures. And yet everybody's got a stereotypical West Coast American accent. Now, regardless of whether that's your audience or not, you should be giving your audience a little bit more credibility than to think that everybody in the game has to have one homogenous accent. So for that reason alone, I really, really think this game deserves to be included on this list, and I really, really think that people should be having a look at this game and should be learning from what you can do and where the boundaries need to be reset. As I've said, the other elements of this game are all very, very strong. I love the fact that a lot of this game is centered around the use of your camera. You are archiving all the different species on this planet. And that's really, really good. And in fact, it takes a conscious effort when you get attacked by a new creature to not immediately reach for a weapon. Sure, you may have to defend yourself ultimately, but after a while, your initial reaction becomes one of, where's my camera? Take a photo of it, archive it. Obviously, if it's something that's going to attack me, then you have to defend yourself. But the camera is a very, very strong element in that you use it for analyzing things, you use it for finding clues, and so that's a really, really nice mechanic. It's been done in other games, but Beyond Good and Evil does it very, very nicely. Obviously, one of the limitations of this platform means that quite often you're talking to people and you just get little written dialogue because they didn't have the ability to have recorded dialogue for every single thing that somebody said. That's purely and simply a limitation of the PS2. And many other PS2 games have exactly the same situation. But whenever there are the scripted events going on, and these happen quite often because there's quite a lot of story in this, you get recorded dialogue in with the scripted events. So in some ways, this game is actually quite a bit stronger than a lot of other games. It does have a lot of scripted story events and a lot of recorded dialogue going on during those scripted events.
Miss Jade, my employer, Mr. de Castellac, like all the inhabitants of Hillis, wish to see an end to this war. The Alpha sections claim to be pushing back the Doms, but they're hiding the truth from us. The Dom's monsters have already invaded every corner of our planet. 2 specimens have been spotted at the bottom of this mine shaft. If we don't warn the population, their numbers will increase radically. Mr. de Castellac is prepared to pay a very high price to be able to defuse a picture of a pair of these monsters. This is a very risky mission, and you're free to refuse.
Well, Doms aren't exactly our best friends. Tell your boss he'll have his picture.
You've of course got, as I've pointed out already, the sort of cinematic camera usage during combat and during various actions. And the game is quite gentle with the player in that your character, there's not really a jump button as such. You go where you need to go and the character will automatically jump over gaps where you're supposed to go to or climb up things that you're supposed to. Occasionally there'll be a context-sensitive choice that will allow you to jump up on top of something, but generally it's pretty good. You can't accidentally fall off things. If you're supposed to fall off something, you can, but generally it's all about experiencing the story rather than having a character feel clumsy and awkward because they keep falling off things or falling down holes, etc. So it's a game that is fairly forgiving so that you can experience the story. Now I have to admit, I haven't actually finished, as I think I said, I haven't finished this game, but since doing this capture for this particular video, I am going to go back and I'm going to finish this game because it is worth it for the story. So this is a game that surprisingly there was not more in the franchise made. Perhaps it didn't sell well enough, I'm not really sure. Because I thought it was a strong game and it was a game that was regarded quite highly. And it was a game that had some very, very good aspects about its design and its audio. So if you do have a chance, I do believe it's still available through some places on PC. Check out Beyond Good and Evil. Thanks for watching.